North Sentinel Island is the island known to kill visitors. The Sentinelese are known to be hostile to outsiders and are not accessible to anyone. The island's isolation is enforced by Indian law to prevent disease outbreaks that could endanger the tribe. The Sentinelese are known for their history of lethal resistance to intrusions. Daring or stupid visitors are known to have been attacked with spears and poisonous arrows, and none of them have survived to tell the tale. North Sentinel Island is simply a no-go area. Imagine living in a world of total isolation, a world isolated from the rest of the world, a world with no technology, no digital connectivity. This is the world known as North Sentinel Island. This documentary has taken more than 6 weeks to prepare. I had to go all over India, do extensive research, and talk to the right people. When you talk to the correct people, you get the information that you need, the information that will give the documentary a longer lifespan. I had to gather footages that's very old, like 1974 footage, 1969 footage that was shot and made available by relevant authorities. And that's the only footage available that I have managed to use in this documentary. When you watch this documentary, I ask you to watch it all the way to the end so you don't miss any information. So please like the video, share and subscribe. It does help a lot with the algorithm. This is the most interesting and yet revealing documentary of hidden black tribes whose descendants came from Africa more than 50 to 60,000 years ago. This documentary will reveal the most isolated tribe in the world, the most interesting lives of hunter-gatherers of these islands. The people of North Sentinel Island are called Sentinelese and are considered an uncontacted tribe, meaning they have little to no contact with the outside world, except for a brief friendly interaction in the 1990s. Sentinelese have fiercely resisted contact with outsiders, even after disaster. This isolated tribe, living on a tiny island in the Indian Ocean, want nothing to do with modern society. They want to be left alone. There is very little information about the Sentinelese and their island. The little that's known about them provides only a glimpse into their lives. There are very few photos of Sentinelese people, and most photos were taken far from shore or from the air. The only video available was taken during an Indian government contact expedition in the 1990s. Snippets of such a video were used in the making of this documentary. I decided to dig deep by researching and traveling across India to gather relevant information about the Andaman and Nicobar Islands tribes. And finally, here we are with an eye-opening and inspiring documentary. Unfortunately, very little is known about these amazing hidden black people that are found in 4 different Indian islands. However, it is believed that they are the direct descendants of some of the first humans to migrate from Africa, arriving and settling in the Andaman Islands more than 50 to 60,000 years ago. The Sentinelese are therefore the indigenous people who inhabit North Sentinel Island in the Bay of Bengal, India. According to Survival International, there are more than 100 uncontacted tribes around the world, mainly in the Amazon rainforest, but the Sentinelese are the most isolated indigenous people in the world. Most of what is known about them comes from boats moored more than an arrow's distance from the shore and from rare past encounters with authorities. The hostility of the Sentinelese tribes makes them dangerous to approach for any scientific studies or research. Had they been accessible to the advances of the West, they would have been assimilated long ago and their unique identity drowned and flooded in foreign genes. Their resistance and total isolation makes them an invaluable outreach that's also impossible to study for our own species. It's my understanding that the very factor that helped the Sentinelese retain independence is somehow interwoven in their propensity to kill intruders, and that makes it rather tricky to investigate them. Sentinelese people speak their own language that nobody speaks or understands. They do not speak Hindi or any Indian or African languages. There is a strong reason why the island is protected. I will cover that in this documentary later. The people found on this island and adjacent islands are black with African features. They are believed to be of African descent and are reported to have arrived in India some 50 to 60,000 years ago. DNA samples collected by a team of scientists found that the black people who have lived in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands for over 50 to 60,000 years traveled out of Africa into the Middle East and Asia and the rest of the world. It is believed that low sea levels provided a useful pathway to Asia, and the ocean supplied reliable food, allowing these early humans to migrate easily from Africa to Asia. Anthropologists separate the indigenous tribes living on the archipelago into two groups. The Shompen and Nicobars are of Asian descent, while the four surviving Andaman tribes originated in Africa. These are the Great Andamanese tribe, the Onge tribe, the Jarawa tribe, and the Sentinelese tribe. The Sentinelese are the most isolated indigenous people on earth, but their distant neighbors, the Shompen, are also among the most isolated, living only on the island of Great Nicobar in the southernmost part of Andaman and Nicobar archipelago. Most Shompen reject all contact with the outsiders. These tribes were referred to as Negro tribes or Negroid ancestry or African descendants or heritage due to their African physical features. The Spanish described Negrito people as little black people. The term Negrito was given to African descendants by early European colonists due to physical similarities in skin and hair to people from the African continent. However, their specific physical traits are not an indication of a recent genetic relationship to African groups. The other two tribes from the islands were referred to as Mongoloid tribes of the Nicobar Islands. The term Mongoloid tribe refers to various indigenous people from East Asia, Southeast Asia, Central Asia, Siberia, parts of Polynesia, and the Americas. These tribes are the Shompen tribe and Nicobarese tribe, and they live on Nicobar Island. The Shompen tribe and Nicobarese tribe are described as of Mongolian ancestry or Asian descendants or heritage. Their ancestry is linked to Southeast Asia and believed to have arrived on the island more than 10,000 years ago. Let's briefly visit the 18th century complication and bigotry categorization of the human race. You see, earlier colonists divided people in race groups or race categorizations. Racial grouping of people was the work of Göttingen School in Germany and later Western scholars. Today, such race categorization is no longer used. Scientists agree that there's only one human race. In the 18th century, people of African ancestry and or African heritage or black people were described as Negroid, Negrito, Negro, Mulatto, or Colored. These terms were merely used for racial grouping of indigenous people from Africa. And in Asia, the term Mongolian race was used to describe people from East Asia, South Asia, the Arctic, the Americas, or the Pacific Islands. The term Caucasian race was used to describe people of European descent, sometimes Arab people, North Indian people, and Latin American people. However, the Caucasian region or the Caucasus region covers Eastern Europe and Western Asia between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, comprising Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and parts of southern Russia such as Dagestan, Chechnya, Ingushetia, etc. The first documented contact with the Andaman Islands tribes was more than 1,000 years ago by Chinese and Arabian travelers who were met with a hail of arrows when they tried to land. They described the Andamanese tribes as 3 feet tall with human bodies and bird beaks. During the 18th and 19th centuries, Christian missionaries also encountered fierce resistance from these tribes who seemed destined to remain an enigma. It was the British that made the first significant breakthrough with the Andaman's indigenous tribes. They even put them on display at Calcutta Zoo after they established a penal colony on South Andaman in 1858. The British attempted to civilize and educate the natives at special homes in which they were dressed in Western clothes and then taught to read and write. In January 1880, a British expedition led by Royal Navy officer Maurice Vidal Portman attempted to capture the Sentinelese people and their island. Officer Portman's armed team swept the jungle and eventually isolating and abducting an elderly couple and 4 children with the help of Andamanese trackers. This Sentinelese family were taken to Port Blair, now known as Sri Vijayapuram. The 2 abducted adults died from diseases shortly after being taken as they had no immunity. Although the abducted children were returned, it left serious psychological and mental scars to Sentinelese people. This horrendous, torturous episode is believed to have increased the Sentinelese hostility towards outsiders. At that time of the islanders' first contact with the British, there were an estimated 5,000 Great Andamanese people. Today, there are less than 1,000 remaining. This first British contact with the Andaman Islanders proved disastrous for many of the Andaman tribes as they have no resistance to common diseases, and that resulted in the islanders quickly succumbing to epidemics of pneumonia, measles and influenza. However, the British Raj was not solely responsible for the Andaman Islands' decline. During the Second World War, Andaman Islands were occupied by the Japanese, who killed hundreds of indigenous people suspected of collaborating with the Allied forces.
August the 15th, 1947, Independence Day for India. In London, the flags of the new Indian Union flutter over the headquarters of India and Pakistan. An era has ended, a new epoch begins. A subcontinent larger than the whole of Europe becomes 2 self-governing dominions within the British Commonwealth of Nations. After less than a century under the British Crown, India's most crucial hour has struck.
After India gained independence in 1947, the island's population increased because of India's first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru. His vision of deforestation, building a modern, independent and democratic India characterized by secularism, economic self-reliance and a commitment to the rule of law. In 2004, the Sentinelese were in the direct path of the tsunami, but somehow they survived. And instead of seeking help, a Sentinelese man was photographed emerging from the island's forest into the beach, firing arrows at a helicopter hovering above their island. The helicopter was sent to check on the Sentinelese welfare. Firing arrows at a rescue helicopter was a clear indication that the Sentinelese did not want outsiders' interference or assistance. The helicopter was sent by the Indian government to fly over the island to assess the situation and check on the tribe's well-being. However, such intrusion wasn't welcomed and was harshly greeted with arrows, poisonous darts and spears. Experts believe that the tribe's deep understanding of natural phenomena such as receding water and birds' behavior helped the Sentinelese anticipate the tsunami's arrival. In January 2006, 2 Indian fishermen, Sundar Raj and Pandit Tiwar, were fishing illegally in prohibited waters and were killed by Sentinelese warriors after their boat accidentally drifted too close to North Sentinel Island. Fishermen who witnessed the attack from the shore described how the pair, believed to be drunk on palm wine, died after they were attacked by near-naked axe-wielding tribal warriors. According to the fishermen, an Indian Coast Guard helicopter sent out to investigate was also attacked with bows and arrows by the same tribal warriors, leaving the pilot under no illusions as to the safety of landing. The dead fishermen's bodies were exposed in the shallow graves after the helicopter downwards the sand. There were no prosecution against the Sentinelese tribesmen who killed the 2 Indian fishermen after they had trespassed on endangered tribes island. Andaman Island law strictly states that people should be kept away from Sentinel Island, as any contact with the outside world is potentially deadly for the Sentinelese, as they are incredibly susceptible to common diseases to which they have no immunity. Sentinelese are not carrying out murder with impunity, as some people may think. Relatives of the 2 drunken fishermen who were killed by the Sentinelese want Sentinelese tribesmen left alone. They voiced condemnation towards their dead relatives' deliberate action of illegally trespassing on endangered tribes island. One of the victims' father stated that he didn't want retribution because the Sentinelese were the victims and not his dead son. According to the fisherman's father, the Sentinelese were only defending themselves with bows and arrows and rocks in the only way they knew how. He continues stating that the Sentinelese live in constant terror of heavily armed poachers from Myanmar and Port Blair. In November 2018, 26-year-old John Allen Chow was the first American who illegally visited the North Sentinel Island with the help from the fishermen he had hired. The fishermen remained in their boat far from the island. Chow entered Sentinel Island carrying gifts that included a football, fish, coconut, and a Bible. According to the fishermen he had hired, Chow's intention was to introduce Christianity to isolated Sentinelese. He tried interacting with some Sentinelese tribesmen who were infuriated and shot poisoned arrows at him. The arrows struck a Bible that Chow was carrying and pierced through his body. The fishermen watched from the boat as the Sentinelese tribes dragged Chow's body along the beach for burial. Chow's body was never found. Fast forward to 31st March 2025, and another American illegally entered North Sentinel Island. This American was identified as Mikhailo Viktorovich Polikov, a 24-year-old Ukrainian American whose father worked as a scientist for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Mikhailo had brought a can of Diet Coke and coconuts to offer as gifts. He also brought a GoPro camera to film the Sentinelese tribe. Once he reached the shore of North Sentinel, he used binoculars to scan the beach in hopes of spotting members of the reclusive tribe. He stayed on the beach blowing a whistle to attract attention from the Sentinelese tribe, but got no response. When no one appeared, he placed the gifts on the sand and waited for a response, but the Sentinelese remained in the dense forest. On his return to the boat, he was spotted by the local fishermen who informed the authorities. Surprise, surprise, Mikhailo Polyakov was eventually arrested and detained in Port Blair. He is currently locked up awaiting trial and is likely to receive between 3 to 5 years in an Indian prison for his stupid illegal stunt. Port Blair is an archipelago nearly 750 miles east of India's mainland. According to Indian authorities, this was not the first time Mikhailo attempted to enter North Sentinel Island to make content. This was his second attempt. The police investigation found that he had conducted detailed research on sea conditions, tides, and accessibility to the island before starting his solo journey on a small rubber dinghy from South Sentinel Island to reach the forbidden North Sentinel Island. He has been widely condemned for endangering the tribe's safety and violating Indian laws that protect such remote communities. The Sentinelese have no immunity against diseases. A simple flu can wipe all of them in an instant. Experts and scientists warn that the Sentinelese lack of immunity to modern diseases makes any exposure to outsiders a potential death sentence. Like so many isolated tribal people with fearsome reputation, the Sentinelese are often inaccurately described as savage or backward. Their hostility to outsiders is easily understandable because the outside world has brought them little but violence and contempt. The Sentinelese hunt in the rainforest and fish in the coastal waters using spears, bows, and arrows, as well as homemade narrow canoes. They are known to be efficient hunters who thrive mainly on seafood and meat from wild animals and or reptiles. They make their own bow and arrows that are known to be heavier and sharper than any other Andamanese tribe. They are thought to live in 3 groups in both large communal huts and more informal shelters. During the 1970s, the Indian authorities made occasional trips to North Sentinel in an attempt to befriend the Sentinelese. During those trips, the authorities will try to land at a distance that was out of arrow's reach. The authorities will leave gifts such as coconuts, bananas, bits of iron, dolls, and pigs. Sometimes the Sentinelese appear to be friendly, and sometimes they will take the gifts into the forest and fire arrows at the visiting authorities. The Sentinelese will use spears to kill the pigs and bury them along with the dolls. Such visits by the Indian authorities became more regular in the 1980s. The Sentinelese tribe of India's remote Andaman Islands have survived occupation of the islands by the Burmese, the British and the Japanese, and in 2004 they survived a tsunami which took the lives of almost 2,000 other islanders in the archipelago. The elusive Sentinelese remain one of the most enigmatic peoples on earth. In August 1981, a 16,000-ton freighter MV Primrose carrying chicken feed from Bangladesh to Australia struck a reef near North Sentinel Island during a storm. The ship captain spotted armed islanders approaching the ship. He ordered everyone to remain inside the steel hull for protection. More than 20 ship crew members never left the boat, but the Sentinelists tried to get to them by building wooden boats and attacking the ship with rudimentary weapons and arrows. The captain radioed for help, fearing for his crew's lives. Fortunately, a fierce storm prevented the rescue and also stopped armed Sentinelese from getting close to the stricken ship. It took a few days for their crew to be rescued by Indian helicopters. The Primrose shipwreck remains on the shore and visible on Google Maps. It continues to provide Sentinelese with metal and iron to make weapons and tools. The Sentinelese scavenging for survival represents a rare instance of acquiring new technology without direct cultural contact with the modern world. This is a unique technological leap from their traditional Stone Age way of life. The first anthropologist to have had a peaceful contact with the Sentinelese was Triloknath Pandit, a director of Anthropological Survey of India. Triloknath Pandit and his colleague landed in North Sentinel Island on the 4th of January 1991. Prior to his 1991 contact visit, he had visited North Sentinel Island in 1967 without any contact with the Sentinelese. At the time of making this video, Mr. Pandit is 90 years old. Mr. Pandit spent decades befriending isolated Sentinelese tribes. Not many people know more about the Sentinelese than him. According to Mr. Pandit, the Sentinelese are peace-loving people despite their fierce reputation towards outsiders. He did acknowledge that during his interactions with the Sentinelese will threaten him and his team, but it never reached a point where the Sentinelese wanted to kill or wound him and his colleagues, because whenever the Sentinelese got agitated, Mr. Pandit and his colleagues would step back. After Mr. Pandit retired, other anthropologists and researchers tried to interact with the Sentinelese, but they received hostilities and attacks from the untouched tribe. Every attempt to study them had to be called off. The Sentinelese have continued to make it clear that they want to be left alone. In 1991, the Sentinelese seemed to have warmed up to the idea of friendship, as they would gesture to the officials to bring more gifts. The Sentinelese would approach the visitors without weapons. However, these friendly interactions were not to last. Although gift-dropping trips continued for a few years, encounters with the Sentinelese were often violent and always highly dangerous for all concerned. At times, the Sentinelists would aim their arrows at the visiting authorities. It was reported that they also attacked visitors' boats with their stone axes. No one knows why the Sentinelists stopped being friendly with the visiting authorities. Perhaps some Sentinelists died as a result of diseases spread during those visits. In 1991, Madhamla Chattopadhyay became the first woman anthropologist to make peaceful contact with the Sentinelese. In 1996, the regular gift-dropping missions stopped. Many officials were beginning to question the idea of attempting to contact people who were healthy and who had thrived without contact with outsiders for tens of thousands of years. Contact had a devastating impact on the neighboring Onge and Great Andamanese people. Their population fell to 85% and 99% respectively. For instance, the neighboring Jangil people were completely annihilated. There is no doubt that sustained contact with the Sentinelese will certainly have similar terrible consequences. Following a campaign by Survival International and local organizations, the Indian government finally abandoned all plans to contact or visit the Sentinelese. All visits to North Sentinel are now strictly illegal, and the Indian Navy and Coast Guard patrols a buffer zone around the island to prevent outsiders from coming too close to the island. The Sentinel Island is a protected world where entry is prohibited by the Indian government. Researchers require permit clearance to travel to this prohibited island. Population on this island is unknown, but is estimated to be between 100 to 200 or more. There is an existing Indian law enacted in 1956 that bans outsiders from traveling to North Sentinel and other islands in the archipelago home to indigenous groups. The 1956 regulation of Andaman and Nicobar Islands Protection of Aboriginal Tribes prohibits travel and any approach closer than 9 kilometers to these islands. This is to safeguard and protect these indigenous communities from infectious diseases, as they are believed not to have acquired immunity. The Sentinelese people simply want to be left alone in their own little island, and the Indian government has granted them that wish after pressure from groups and other organizations who fought for the protection of the Sentinelese people after recognizing the dwindling population of the other two Andaman tribes, namely the Onge tribe and the Jarawa tribe. Those two great Andaman tribes benefited from Western civilization and as a result suffered from diseases and death. The Indian government acknowledgement and acceptance that the Sentinelese people have the right to decide for themselves and that they are best left alone to live their lives without interaction with the outside world was a tough undertaking by any government in the world.